like I gave them a lot of credit for each of them putting their ego at the door and walking in here and just going to work. And that's how both of them are. But sometimes narratives start and things like that on the outside, which is great for publicity. But the reality is we got to come in this room every single day and become the best football players and best people we can be. And I credit those guys a ton because they made each of them a better version of themselves.
Hello again for 24 Ever, the stories of the National Championship Ohio State Buckeyes, episode number 4. That's Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward, and the main attraction, National Championship winning safeties coach Matt Guerrieri. I keep asking and introducing everybody that way. You earn it. It's your new title. Does it sound right? Is it sinking in for you? Everybody seems to be reacting differently to coming to terms with winning a ring.
You know, I love it for our guys and everything that they poured into it, and to be a part of it and to contribute to the team is obviously awesome. But I feel like it's doing your job, to be honest. I feel like we're on to the next, and that's kind of the nature of college football. So we enjoyed it for a couple of days there, but then we're back to work.
But only one set of coaches and one roster gets to do it to the highest level. I mean, it's got to be – I know that that's the most special part. Yeah. You want it to be about everybody else, but you guys all came together and accomplished something at the very highest level. And everybody, I guess, would respond to that differently. But it's got to – life doesn't seem like it changed it all for you.
No, I mean, I think in that moment when you reflect back and confetti's falling on you and you're giving your guys hugs and your family comes down from the stands, I mean, that's a special moment and something that we'll all cherish for the rest of our life. But the reality is that you got another season approaching, and what you did to get to that point isn't good enough to go do it again, you know? So you've got to go back and rebuild your foundation, and that's what we're doing.
You say that, but on the wall right over there, the first goal is to grade a champion. Right. So when you become a champion, as a kid from Northeast Ohio, growing up in the state, playing high school football in Ohio, the opportunity to come be a coach at Ohio State, a full-time assistant, not the same as it was 2 years ago when you were here. And then you get to win a national championship. Yep. Has it struck you? Or I know you're very task-oriented, you're very next thing must happen type of guy, but like, you won a national championship. It was 8 weeks ago.
For sure.
It was 6 weeks ago.
For sure. I mean, absolutely. You give yourself a chance to catch your breath and reflect on it. It's incredibly special, you know. But this business is, what have you done for me lately? You know, and I was just with Lathan Ransom up at the Combine, and he's not putting on the scarlet and gray anymore, you know. So it's developing the next group. I do go back to the process. But yeah, obviously the results, to have that type of result at the end, you know, verifies what you did from a process standpoint. And yeah, I mean, what an awesome experience. And I'll be honest, like you talk about being a Northeast Ohio kid, like I have pride on that, in that as an Ohio guy, you know what I mean? So to feel like this is ours, you know, and I mean that.
If you look at this coaching staff, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of big names and veteran coaches, but I think you and Hart are the only ones that are from Ohio, right? It has to mean a little bit something to you. That's the team you grew up wearing the jersey of in the backyard when you were a kid, right?
For sure. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And now you're a national champion. But I want to go back. And one thing I've
you don't
found,
want to know whose jersey he was wearing?
No, I'm sure. How old are you?
35.
It was probably
35.
James Laurinaitis. If we had to guess, it was probably a James Laurinaitis jersey. It was either a 10 or a 33. That's all they made back then. It was either Troy or James. So, one thing that I've found as we do these interviews is that there's always that circular thing. For you, it's not just a Northeast Ohio kid coming home, but it's 10 years at Duke, coming to Ohio State. You're here a year, and you feel like, hey, maybe I'm in the door at Ohio State, and then all of a sudden you're at Tulsa in Indiana.
Yep.
And then last January 10th, you get rehired at Ohio State. 5 days later, you're in Georgia recruiting Caleb Downs again. Yep. And how that's really where I want to start your role in this. How crazy was that little whip around to all of a sudden being like, hey, I'm back at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And now I have a chance to bring in and be a part of re-recruiting the guy that was probably, the most dominant defensive player in the country this year. And take us back to that call. Yeah. And then your role in being there in Georgia.
Yeah. It's all a team effort, right? And that's, well documented. But, you get back here. That happens with Coach Saban. You think it might be a possibility, then it becomes a possibility. Next thing you know, we're all flying into Atlanta, and we're going to Caleb's house. And first off, I can't say enough about his family, who he is as a person. Incredibly, incredibly special. And then you have a unique relationship, obviously, first time through the recruiting process of his relationship with Ohio State, but also Tim Walton, right? And Tim's known his father, Gary, for a long time, grew up together. And then, to have a chance to be able to sit in that room and show Caleb, a blueprint for how he continued to improve, how he can win a national championship, which was awesome that those things came to fruition, and then, translate to the NFL.
We've heard the story. He was interviewing you guys, essentially, knowing that you had been at Ohio State and then you were gone. When he was originally recruited, it was, I love Ohio State, but I'm not sure about this defense.
That's right.
And it's, I can go play for Nick Saban. I can't turn that down. How was the conversation different now that heading into that meeting when you guys had the testimony, not just the theory on the defense, and what was it like to be able to go into his living room and say, this is why it actually worked?
For sure. Yeah, I think when you have a proven product at the place you're at, it makes a big difference. And we've had a proven product, but it may not have been in scarlet and gray. So when you come into a situation, then there's trust, but there's a little bit of what's the reality for me? And you don't want to be a guinea pig when you're that level player, and I totally get that. And that's, for Caleb to be able to come back and be able to show him, what we have established and then how he can enhance that, which he obviously did. And that's the same for recruiting today. You're dealing with top players in the country, and that's part of the reason Ohio State's so attractive is you have the history over time and the proven product right now.
What is something that he said or did in that meeting that stood out to you?
I think it goes back to the details with him. I think he's that way as he prepares for a game in his film study, but that was the first time for me that I got to learn how his mind operated with football. So it wasn't just like, what's the plan for me? It was, it's 3rd and 1, and what are we calling? It's in the red zone with 2 minutes left. What are we calling? It was specific things, situations, how we study film. And it was a mix of his film and our film. And then also his film of how can we enhance the product from that standpoint? So I would say overall, the detail was high level.
I think I asked you about this before the national championship on the notebook, which was like somebody with his attention to detail, the challenge that is for a coach, which is like the best thing that you could possibly want is someone who really wants high level, constant coaching and attention and development. But that really started, I guess, in that first meeting, not just like, oh, he's here in spring ball or it's getting ready for the Penn State game. Like that's just the way he is at all times, it seems like.
That's how he is. I mean, he's wired that way. He was raised exceptionally well by his family. This is a special guy. I actually I was speaking at the state clinic a couple weeks ago, and I was asking the group of coaches, most high school coaches, about who's got a problem child in their room, like who makes it hard on you as a coach, right? Maybe a guy that's late to a meeting or his habits aren't great or things like that. Like that could be challenging as a coach because it just detracts from what you're trying to get done. Or you could be challenged as a coach because you have a guy so high level in your room that you better be on point or else he's telling you to get out of the room, right? And that's the reality with Caleb. And I mean that in like an endearing way to him. This is such a high level mind, so detailed. The preparation level is so high that I knew, having the responsibility of coaching him, that I had to be on point with everything.
So that is like right after you get the job and return to Columbus. When you left, I feel like you were gone for longer than a year. Yeah. I don't know how you felt. It's like you're gone and then you're right back in the door. Did you anticipate when you left that would be an opportunity? Did it surprise you the way that it turned around so quickly? What did you sort of anticipate when you left 2 years ago, I guess, at this point?
Yeah. I have no expectations, to be honest, in this business. It's treat people right and work as hard as you possibly can, and you add value by doing that. So, no, I didn't know if I would ever be back at Ohio State or not. Obviously, forever grateful for my opportunity to be at Ohio State. I can promise you that much. But no, that's my philosophy as a coach is, you're treating people right and you're doing the best that you can.
When you walk back into that situation after taking the year away, obviously there's Caleb and him notwithstanding. The rest of the room was guys you knew pretty much. Some of them, the younger guys, obviously you didn't recruit last year, but players like Jalen McClain, et cetera. But the relationship you had with Lathan Ransom, I think, is one of those parts of this championship story that people aren't really ever going to get a full appreciation for, because you and Lathan and Stu and the things that he had to go through. But you were not the full-time position coach at that time, so people maybe don't know how much time the graduate assistants and assistant to the assistants spend with these players. When you knew Lathan was going to be here, because he'd already made the decision, so it wasn't like you were waiting on him to return. But what did you see different out of him last January when you got back after another disappointing injury, after having to make the decision to return? How did you get a sense for what mode he was in? Because it felt like to us that Lathan was in like psycho mode all year. And I mean that in the best possible
For sure. A level of maturity, been through another setback, right? So I think that makes you reevaluate. And then a sense of urgency and extreme focus. You call it psycho mode. I don't disagree with that, but that urgency, that extreme focus, knowing I got 1 year left, no matter what happens. I got 1 year left. I have big goals and aspirations for what I want to accomplish and to win a national championship. And then also on the biggest stage, just with him up in Indy. And I was that same focus. I was standing there in the end zone as he was warming up to do his drills at the combine. And it was that same Lathan, intensity, focus, but he's a special guy.
I don't want to jump all over the timeline here too much, but we're talking about Lathan, and I go to, week 7 this year, and there was some concern that maybe like he was going to miss some time, right? And then he didn't.
Yep.
And can you walk us through that? Because we were hearing certain things like, oh, he might be out a month. He might be out. How the hell did that work out? and how great. I mean, were you panicking? Was there, because you had, like, your job was certainly not hard at Ohio State this past year when you look at it from the outside.
That's easy for Berman.
I'm saying, looking at it from the outside.
Trade my whistle and burn him over.
You have the 3 best safeties in America, and Jordan Hancock, Layson Ransom, and Caleb Downs all on the same team. And like everyone else, it seemed like had real trauma in their rooms they had to manage, and yours seemed to just float right along. But there was that potential hiccup in the middle of the season. How panicked were you, and how relieved were you when it turned out to be not a nothing burger? But
I mean, you deal with reality, right? So we had a bye week in there, which helped. That extends a week without having to play during that time. Have great faith in the other guys in the room. Jordan Hancock stepped up and played a ton of different things for us this year, positions, and helped us tremendously down the stretch. But he took on a big role playing high safety that week. Jalen McClain stepped up that week. So you have confidence in the depth that, been able to build in the room from that standpoint. And then confidence in Lathan too, right? So now injuries are what they are, right? Yeah. They happen, bumps, bruises, some more severe than others. We didn't know the exact timeline at first. Thought it might have been a little bit longer than it was.
It was panic. There was panic broiling in my brain at the time.
But credit to our training staff. What they did, Stu, those guys, to be able to help get him back. Credit to him. The amount of time that guy puts in to have his body ready to go, incredible. We were fortunate. Yeah. We were fortunate. So it wasn't as significant as maybe what we thought at first.
What was that conversation like with him when there was the initial concern? I mean, was it consolation? Was it support? Was it just pat on the back? You're fine.
Good question. It's support. It's support at first, right? So anytime a guy gets injured, I've unfortunately been there before. I tore ACLs twice in college. I'm nowhere near the guys from a talent standpoint of here, but I've been there before as
weren't
a
you on campus with Steph Curry at the same time?
It does not. Unfortunately, talent's not like osmosis that you just get from him. I wish.
I wasn't sure. I
was on campus with him, but no, nowhere near that talent level. So I think you're there by a guy's side. You have real authentic relationships. You're able to put your arm around a guy and say, okay, here's where we're at right now. And then you take information as it is, right? And fortunately, we got positive information. And we were able to, get back on our feet quickly. And you obviously saw the level of play that he had this year.
As Berm said, we're jumping around a little bit with Lathan, but I think in my mind, I think back to, if it's the psycho mode that we're talking about, it was after the opener. He came upstairs to the post-game room, and it was like, he made a couple plays. We're talking about, it's like, he felt like people, not because of Caleb necessarily, but that he was overlooked and not getting the credit for the importance to Ohio State's defense or to where he fit in the national landscape. If he's saying that to us publicly, I have to imagine that was a conversation between you and him, or in the room, that he had something to prove this year. What was that part like? Set the injury aside, the motivation level that he had. And I don't know, again, it could be partially because of Caleb, could not be. Could be the injuries, could not be. I don't know what all, it was probably all boiled into one.
Yeah, all boiled into one. I think he has a chip on his shoulder anyways, which you see, right? You see the level of physicality, the intensity he plays with. That doesn't happen by accident, And credit to his parents and the way that he was raised and the toughness that he has. I mean, dude's special. I mean, he means the world to me. But then, I think probably he felt like he didn't perform to the level that he knew he was capable of because of injuries. And sometimes your career doesn't always go the way that,
Right.
the fairy tale that we have. And, when he signed the paper and what he thought was going to happen from there. And he's here probably longer than he expected to be here. And he had gone through more adversity than he thought. But that's who made him, helped make him who he is today. And then you have an elite player in Caleb Downs who enters the room too, who brings a lot of national attention with him. Yeah. Right. So the reality as a coach is you're conscious of all those things. You have a dynamic of personalities that work in a room. And it's my job as a coach to first off build relationships individually and then us collectively build relationships and bring the best out of everyone. Right. That's what we want. And I think Caleb and Lathan, they both have said this, but if they were sitting here right now with us, they would say each of them made each other better.
Yeah.
And
a lot of those Wednesdays after practice, I remember the last guys off the field. So.
I would have my son watch them hit the sled by themselves. I'd be like, hey man, this is what hard work looks like right here. This is what it looks like right here. Hey, one more hit, one more deep ball drill. One more. You should hear we'd get on the sidelines. We would fix our adjustments on the iPad and they'd be competing with each other. Hey man, you got 2 tackles already. I got 1 big hit. They're competing with each other, and I actually talked to Lathan about this and I gave them a lot of credit for each of them putting their ego at the door and walking in here and just going to work. And that's how both of them are. But sometimes narratives start and things like that on the outside, which is great for publicity. But the reality is we got to come in this room every single day and become the best football players and best people we can be. And I credit those guys a ton because they made each of them a better version of themselves.
Between you, Caleb, and Lathan, who is deciding what needs to happen after a Wednesday practice? Like, who's coming up? Whose job is that?
That's them. That's them. Credit to them. With extras, they know the plan of this was done well, this was not done well, what the correction points are from the previous Saturday that we played. They know those things, And to be honest, they know a lot of those things even before I point them out. But it's my job to give answers and solutions of how we can improve those things. But the extra work, that's those guys.
Obviously Lathan and Jordan are veterans, and they probably understood more so than first or second year guys. When a guy like Caleb walks in, what he means to the overall team. And so it is easier, I think, for the veterans to check the ego a little bit than, say, a young guy who's been here for 1 year and then is getting usurped by Caleb coming in and being what he is. How different were those conversations? And were Jordan and Lathan instrumental in helping Jaden and Jalen and Leroy and those other guys understand, like, this isn't about you. It's about us, and a guy like Caleb makes us all so much better.
For sure. I think it starts with honest conversations. Like, it helps to have vets who have perspective. But it's also
because those guys are the same age as Caleb.
For sure. It's honest conversations when a guy is entering the program. It's honest conversations about where a guy is at, where he needs to get to be able to contribute on the field. This generation, I think just in general, not even talking about our guys, there's not a lot of truth tellers in those guys' lives, right? So that's our job, is to be honest with them. But then also, yes, to lean on vets. And I think we had a great group of vets on this last team where the young guys could follow them, no matter what the situation was. Whether that was getting the bus on time or that was a situation like this with a dynamic.
With Caleb, and again, we'll talk probably mostly about these 3 guys, Caleb, Jordan, and Lathan, because they were never off the field. When you see a guy like that come in, you said, he forced you to make sure you were on point. Can you take us to a moment, whether it was in spring, whether it was in the season, where there was maybe some friction or a point where you had to tell him, hey, I'm the coach?
I don't know that there ever was a point like that, because you've got a guy that is very respectful, communicates well. Now, plenty of times in the meeting room, or this is the way that I've coached, or this is the way that I see it, he may have been exposed to a different way of seeing it. And that's part of my job too, is say, I'm checking my ego too, right? What do we care about? Picking up a trophy and being the best version of ourselves, right? So I think I would call it more of a collaboration, right? So from not a, hey, this is how it's got to be, or no, I'm not doing it that way. Those conversations aren't like that. Those conversations are, this has worked this way. This is how I see it. And then what's functional for him. So I always say the player really knows more than the coach. What I mean by that is I know it in my head, but physically I can't go do what Caleb Downs could do. You know that, right?
Well, I mean, I've never seen him run. Maybe prior to the ACL.
Very few can. But the reality of the player is the player knows it the way the coach does, but he's the functional piece. He can apply it, right? So
when he's talking to you, are you hearing Nick Saban's voice or Caleb Downs' voice? Because I assume that 1 year of instruction, we should cover Ohio State, but Nick Saban is one of, maybe he's the greatest coach of all time. Is it easier for you as a coach to take what you're hearing from him as opposed to a guy that didn't play for someone like Nick Saban? I don't know if I'm asking this correctly, but like, where a lot of his insight and information is coming from. Do you see that as an opportunity to make yourself a better coach?
Well, it's always an opportunity to grow and to learn, whether you're talking to another high-level coach or another player. Really what I did was, or what we did together, Caleb and I, is when he first got here, at night, we would put his phone. So during the day, we'd have our meetings, we'd have all that kind of stuff. Well, after dinner, we'd come together, we'd just sit down one-on-one, and we would put his film on from when he was at Alabama. And that was my way to try to tap into his mental game and the way that he sees the game, which is unique. Because without that, then I wouldn't be able to help him. Right. So that was my way to be able to say, okay, how do you see the game? What's your process like here? Ooh, I really like that. I think that works for you. Okay. Or maybe I see it a little bit different. I think this could enhance your game.
Folks, apologies again for the interruption, but at the podcast, we are working to create something special for you all to really enjoy. And as such, we're pretty selective about the brands that we work with and share with you all. And as a reminder for that, we're excited to reintroduce you to our newest sponsor, Axia Time. Axia is the official timepiece of both the college football playoff and the Heisman Trophy. They create ultra-custom watches to commemorate life's greatest moments, like winning a national championship. Axia has created an incredible collection of timepieces to celebrate the 9th national championship for the Buckeyes. These are truly heirloom quality, and there is even a limited edition Ryan Day autographed box set for those of you who want to own a piece of Buckeye history. And who doesn't? Equally important to the quality of the product is the quality of the people behind the brand. As you learn about their backstory, you'll understand why we are partnering with them to bring you this 24-ever series with the stories of the Ohio State Buckeyes national champions. Axia has created a special offer for the podcast listeners. Use the code THE10, THE10 at checkout and get 10% off your order. Check out their designs at axiatime.com, AXIA time.com. Axia Time, watches that tell so much more than time.
We are getting to tell these stories. Matt and Ryan Day was talking about that throughout. Like, once you win the national championship, you tell these stories. And I don't think we can't pretend like it was all just a nonstop elevation for this program all the way to the top. Like the middle of the year, there were real questions, especially on defense and coming back from Eugene. From your memories, going through that process and what happened in that loss. What was it like for you in this room? What was it like for the defensive coaching staff? It was called re-engineering at the time. What was that process like?
Yeah, I think every game, you have the same analytical evaluation of what happened. Practice, the same thing, right? So we have the same, my form for that game looks the same as the form for the other games. It doesn't matter if you win by 21, right, or you lost the game from a standpoint of what was the process. And the reality is we get a test every single Saturday to see did our process work, right? So we go back and us as coach would be the first to say, we can put the guys in better position than we did. And that's ultimately what we decided as a staff was the product wasn't what we wanted the product to be. We know that. You know that. Everybody who watched the game knows that.
Sure.
We knew we were better than the product that we put out there. And we looked at ourselves and we said, okay, what's the design? How do we put ourselves in better position? We had answers and we were able to apply that going forward. So again, that's check your ego. Let's be analytical about it. Let's say what worked, what didn't. And then let's put a process in place to become better. I mean, and let's say we won the game. The problem, Coach Day says all the time, the problems are still there.
Sure.
The problems are still there. And the team that ultimately wins it all, which was us this year, because we solved those problems along the way and we became a better version of ourselves.
When you're in the middle of that process and you say it's the same no matter what, or we can, that may be, that sounds almost like coach speak, but like it can't be the same when you lose, right? There's got to tell me there's more urgency. There's fist fights. There's anger. There's throwing papers across the room.
I would say this. There better be that urgency when you win.
Okay.
Because if not, and you come in the room and everybody's going like this and patting each other on the back, you're going to get your butt kicked fast.
Right.
So it's easier to learn sometimes after a win because you don't have that same bad taste in your mouth. But as a coach, trust me, just because we won by however much doesn't mean that meeting room with Walt and I are going to be the nicest place,
sure.
Right? We're pointing out every single detail because that's what it takes in the biggest moments, you know? So, unfortunately that game happened, but fortunately we were able to respond.
Well, I mean, we can use this season as a prime example that you have that game on October 12th that you lose and there's stuff to learn from. Looking back, the next game, which was the Nebraska game 2 weeks later, you obviously, the team did not perform very well, and there's probably more to learn from that game because you weren't playing against a team that was like for like talented as you were in Eugene. How do you guys handle that? Because there's obviously, we talk about it all the time, like it's easier to learn lessons after a bad win than a good loss, right? So what had to change that? And from a schematic standpoint, you guys had the answers. Was it as simple as just moving Caleb closer to the line of scrimmage? What was the answer? I mean, the season's passed. Everyone's seen the film. You tell us what happened.
Yeah, I think it starts with players, right? So it's, are we putting our players in the best position to be successful is probably the best way to put it. So having Caleb Downs around the ball is always advantageous, right? So not to say that he wasn't around the ball before that, but you take a hard look and you say, okay, where are we putting these guys to impact the game, right? And then what are the situations that we've focused on? Where have we done well? Where have we not done well, right? So it's third down or it's a 2-minute situation, whatever those are, right? To say, okay, we're performing well or not in these, we're focusing more on those. Yeah. So after that, I would say it's personnel first from there and then situational football.
But Caleb is the chess piece that everyone talks about, but what did you guys see or feel like you needed to adjust when it came to Lathan and Jordan? Was it just because they're so interchangeable that allows you to do things maybe you hadn't done? From a football X's and O's standpoint, can you explain to people what maybe you saw and adjusted?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our system based around 5 defensive backs, right? Nickel, a field and the boundary safety, we call adjuster and bandit, and 2 outside corners. We like to be flexible with those pieces to be able to move them without having to bring different personnel always on the field. So that could be advantageous to bring a guy that does something very well. Hey, this guy blitzes well, or this guy covers really well, to bring that guy on. What did we do? We had Jordan Hancock, who we could put at a focal point, let's say blitz off the edge of the defense or cover a guy or play deep. He had a number of things he can do well. Caleb Downs, who can do all of it well, right? We can insert into the run fit. We can cover deep. We can blitz. We can match a tight end and Warren, whatever we want to be able to do. And then you have Lathan Ransom, who had patrolled the boundary side of the field. And again, you saw a number of things that we did involving him down in the run game, dropping him back, right? So I kind of described all 3 of those guys with similar things that they can do.
But they're like marionettes almost, right?
That's right.
So when one of them goes up, the other has to go back.
That's my point.
There's things that you could only really do with that group.
That's right. So what makes that group unique, and I wouldn't say just that group, but what makes that group unique is they can interchange.
And the model for the future.
That's right. So you have position flexibility with those guys, right? So sometimes you would see what looked like our normal structure with Hancock at nickel and the 2 safeties high, or you might see that flipped, or you might see all of them down or all of them back, right? So what we were able to do is we're able to create coverage contours or pictures pre-snap for a quarterback and offensive coordinator that look a certain way, and then post-snap be able to play whatever style we want, right? And what those guys provide you as a coach is flexibility with the same pieces. So you can't target Caleb Downs and say, he's just going to do this, or Lathan Ransom and say, he's just going to do this. And it allows us flexibility to be able to highlight strengths, hide weakness, blend it together, be aggressive in multiple, and we had a lot of fun doing it.
We are having a lot of fun asking this question because the answers have been different every time so far, which is, when did you think or realize in your mind Ohio State's going to win a national championship? Because some were thinking, well, I think Justin Fry said in the middle of the second quarter against Oregon. Ryan Day said when Jack Sawyer picks up the fumble. Well, what moment stands out to you? Because I assume it wasn't just when the clock hit 0 against Notre Dame, but it could have been. Like, when did that sink in for you that you thought it's going to happen?
Yep. I try to program my brain to say until the clock hits 0.
I know, but
I will say this.
We're getting true answers now, which is what I love.
When that ball popped up right into Jack's hands, everyone went running. I was right there. Everyone goes running down the sideline. I didn't. I had my mic down and I said, we're going to the Natty, boys. So at least I knew that was going to happen at that point. Now, win it.
Yeah.
Again, I try to, I know I've said this a lot. I sound like coach speak. I try to stay focused on just the process. But I knew, obviously we'd have a 50-50 chance at that point, right? So
it's pretty good.
I'll give you that much. Yep.
We're talking about all these little forks in the road and the data points that that maybe seem to propel this team. We have heard now in these interviews with Coach Lachlan, with Coach Day, with Coach Fry, it all seems to go back to Penn State. There seems to be something about that game this past year in 2nd of November where it seemed like a monkey was taken off of people's backs almost. And a lot. Now, obviously, you guys lost the game to Michigan 4 weeks later, but can you take us to Penn State and how important that game was for the mentality of not the players, but the coaches that had been there and said, hey, we have a very special group, but now you have this hiccup against Oregon. Now you go there and it's a nail biter. How important was that game just for the coaches' confidence to say, hey, we can go anywhere we want and win?
I go back to the mindset being a playoff mindset after that Oregon loss. So every week being that do or die kind of mindset because we knew what it was going to take to get to where we wanted to go and control our own destiny. So I think that was the mindset anyways. But then you're in a hostile environment on the road. You got a top 5 matchup or whatever it was at the time. It doesn't start exactly how you want, being down 10-0. I would say, I don't know what it looked like from the public standpoint. But if you would look at our guys on the sideline, they're like, all right, here we go. Like it was like nothing. I mean, it was as if you were up a touchdown, So that mindset had been created from Coach Day, that playoff mindset, that intensity. So obviously a big win in a big spot. But I think, so maybe I would compare that to a March Madness team that wins a close game in an earlier round, you know what I mean, to propel you from that. But interesting. I don't think of that as like one specific pivotal moment from there, but obviously we knew the stakes were, it was a big spot to be able to go get that.
We asked Ryan, name a play from this season that you felt like was a turner, a moment. And he named 5 of them, and they were all from the Penn State game. We're like, okay, so that game must have meant something to him. If we can, then fast forward to the Michigan game. Caleb gets a huge interception, his first as a Buckeye. You're like, oh my gosh, this is the moment. Doesn't go the way you want. There's been so much conversation this offseason already about that December 2nd all-team meeting. Ryan said everyone basically had to grab something that they were accountable for and figure out how to fix it. For you and your guys, what was that?
We didn't close the game out. A 3rd down play that bounced around the edge of our defense. We had a chance to down the ball and alter the outcome of that game, and we didn't finish it. So from a secondary standpoint, it was about finishing. We had been close. We had done a lot of positive things, but we didn't finish it. So, it doesn't matter the accolades, what people say about you, that kind of stuff. It matters. Do you close it out, right? The biggest thing to me that someone could say about us is you finish. That's ultimately what we're judged on, right? As a competitor, whether you're in those big moments, you make a last second shot or whatever it is. We tackle the ball and we finish a 3rd down, whatever it is. So to me, it was, okay, how do we focus more on finishing? And we put that into our drill work. We create those environments, right, to make sure we can do that. And I thought we would handle those situations better down the stretch.
We saw in the school's 24-minute video about the season, one of the very first scenes is Lathan at the first practice after that meeting, preparing for the Tennessee game and saying, we're going to go get this one and then we're going to go on a run. Is when you see a guy, you're raising these kids in many ways. When you see someone step up like that and take that kind of accountability and knowing that the coaches don't have to do it, you have leaders on this team. How rewarding is it to see that, but then also to see the guys follow it?
Yeah, that was our team. I think of Mick, you asked him at the beginning of the year, what was special about this team was the leadership, right? And that's fostered right now with the MAC drills and all the things that we're doing right now to rebuild the foundation. But especially when you have a guy like Lathan that's been through it. It means a whole lot more of him saying it to his peers than me getting up and saying that, right? That's the guy that is in the locker room, lives with these guys. They blood and sweat and cry together. That's the reality of it. So I don't know if there's ever been great teams that aren't player-led, but this was definitely a player-led team.
All right, you're forward thinking, but we are looking back at last year. When you have a moment that you reflect, what's the first play that goes through your mind?
It's a good question. What's the first play that goes through my mind from this past year? I guess not one off the top of my mind, right?
So you're already in 2025.
So compartmentalized.
No, I a couple things, I guess. From the Penn State game, a couple stand out to me is that pass breakup in the back of the end zone by Caleb is a big play. They're trying to hit Warren to the flat. Lathan knows where the route's going. He jumps the route, and you got a big goal line stand there. And from that game as well, IGB's picking in the end zone. I think those are two red area stops that could be 14 points, right? And that's a big difference in the end of that outcome.
Why is this team so good at goal line stands? Why was it?
Belief. They didn't care where the ball was. Give us an inch and we'll defend. It doesn't matter. Put it in the middle of the parking lot. It doesn't matter. These guys love playing football, but they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. I think that showed. Like that fight Coach Jay talked about a lot, to keep the team together. Each week of the play, hey, we're just fighting to stay together another day. Practice another day, play another day. I think you saw that same fight. So when guys blow up in a tough situation, that same response to adversity. That's an adverse situation. It's not comfortable. You're defending a blade of grass, And I think that's one. And then the other one is, that play when Caleb pulls the trigger against Texas and Lathan downs the ball. I mean, you got a chance for, like let's say it's a 2-yard TFL. Okay, well, you're still in a 50-50 run pass situation, right? You have 2 downs to defend a couple yards, that type of stuff. 7-yard loss. Now you're in a known throw situation for 2 downs. So you got to be a little more creative.
I remember after the Cotton Bowl, Berm and I were doing the notebook, and he just kept talking about Caleb triggering. And I almost forgot. Yes, Caleb made the play. He reads it, and you've got a different perspective on that than we do. But then Lathan also finishes the play.
Mm-hmm.
It was, even in that moment, it was still both of them. How did they do that? What's the key there?
They're just doing their job. This might sound crazy to you, right? I mean, you'll see the tight ends trade. They're in a heavy set. We're in heavier people. We had success when people were trying to run the ball. They tried already, right? To run the ball through the middle of our defense. We had success. They tried to get us into a man situation where they were cracking support and trying to circle our defense. Caleb watches the tight ends he trade. Lathan comes over with him. The back comes out off Caleb's primary key. He triggers downhill. It forces the blocks to happen faster. Lathan sees a clean crack replace, and they're just responding to their keys and doing what they do, which looks like it is a heroic play, right?
Is that a perfect play?
It's a great
Is that
play.
a perfect defensive play? Is that play?
We defended it perfectly, yes. We defended it perfectly. I mean, from a standpoint of them having awareness of what was going on and then be able to, we talk about pulling your trigger, right? So that kind of response. Let's say Caleb sees the play. What makes Caleb special is his ability to respond like that. And if he doesn't respond like that, well, the blocks can be set up a little bit easier. You know what I mean? Things like that. So then Lathan doesn't know, is his guy blocking? Is he running a route? Mm-hmm. Right? So all of those responses for guys just doing their job at max capacity, as hard as they can, it results in that.
We spent a lot of last off season trying to not grade, but you talk about all the guys that returned, right? Mm-hmm. All of the seniors, all the guys coming back, and who's most valuable, who allows the team to get the most.
Yeah.
And one of the guys that kept being brought up in Sutherland was Jordan Hancock.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, even in this episode, we've spent 80% of our time talking about Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs. And Jordan's versatility, the way he played the year you were gone, everyone's like, man, this kid's going to be really special. Do you think that he got enough love for what he did outside of this building?
I don't pay as much attention, to be honest with it. Mm-hmm. Okay. But no, probably not. I think he's probably the unsung hero of the group, right? And I mean, I could have easily mentioned his interception against Nebraska to ice the game in a 2-minute drill. And we're not sitting here having this conversation right now, right? So, no, he doesn't get enough credit, but in the building, he does. In the building.
What the hell happened against Nebraska? I mean, let's just get to it. What was going on? I'm exceedingly curious about the mindset after the Oregon game into that game, because it seemed like, and we're here to just shoot the proverbial poop, when it looked like a team that was conflicted as are we what we thought we are? Or was it hey, this game just, because you're talking about playoff mindset after the Oregon game, right? But then the first game after the Oregon game is the an egg that gets laid. So how did you guys bounce back from that? What happened in that game?
He's still worried
from a coach perspective. When you guys reviewed it, how do you assess it? Because you can't just throw it away.
No, you assess it every rep in detail. Like I said, that process, no matter what it is, you assess that. And what I can tell you coming out of that is, situationally, you have to say, okay, what are the things that we did really well or the things that we didn't? And obviously the positive there is a big 2-minute stop at the end of the game to be able to do that. But I think any of those, I guess another example of adversity. Did the game not go our way? No, it did at the end of the game, right? But that's an adverse situation that you can build guys through that process too. Take Jordan, for example. That's a big spot to ice a game like that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's big. Jalen McLean's, I think he actually started that game. I think he was the first guy out in that, right? So when you start saying, okay, how are you able to build off some of this? There's a lot of positives to take away.
All right, so we're getting to the end. You are on to 2025, so we're going to take up too much more of your time. What off-the-field memory or post-game memory, pre-game, family, what non-game-related memory is burned in your brain? That's the first thing you think about for this run.
For this one coming up, or for the one we just had?
Before we just had.
Yeah,
okay. We're not on 25 like you.
I'm with you. That makes sense. It's a memory, so it's not coming up. I would say we have family night on Thursdays here. Mm-hmm. So that's an awesome night because our families are able to come to practice, have dinner, and be around the team. So my wife would bring our 2 sons, so JP's 4 and Max is 2, and to have them run onto the field in our defensive back huddle. Hear Coach Walt do his Thoughtful Thursdays. Not for game Fridays. Okay, thoughtful Thursdays, right? Thoughtful Thursdays. But be in that huddle. And then just to hang out with the guys. And JP would bring his little football, and he wears number 9 to be like Malik Hartford. That's his favorite.
Oh, okay.
And
he wants the underdog, not a starter.
He loves Malik.
Okay.
He loves Malik. Wears 9 in soccer. Oh, yeah. He'll wear a soccer jersey with the 9 to be like Malik. And, to go tackle and run around out there. But anyways, that's, guys don't see that. Yeah. And that's what makes Ohio State special. You see all the talent. You see what these guys do on Saturdays. These are great people. And for them to be able to grab my kids and hug them and be a part of my family's life is special to me.
My last thing for you before we let you get on with your day is he didn't get a chance to really give a goodbye to Ohio State, Jim Knowles, when he left. Mm-hmm. But obviously he's been a huge part of your life for over a decade. What's the lasting lesson that Matt Guerrieri learns from Jim Knowles? And I mean, if you want to just look into the camera and thank him, now's your chance.
No, I'm not staring in the camera and giving some big goodbye.
I want to get some tears for you. I want to get some tears.
I did not see that coming.
No, Jim and I have had a relationship for a long time. And I would say one thing about him is he's adaptable. I think if you look at his career and what he's been able to do, he's able to adapt. So that's something that, I've learned from him throughout, for sure.
He was leaving at the same time that you guys were celebrating that national championship. And I know you are such a team-oriented and player-oriented coach. It had to have made you uncomfortable when Ryan Day stands up there and says, Matt Guerrieri, this is the rising star in the coaching profession. I mean, you didn't want the spotlight on you, but it was. Everybody's immediately talking about you. We latch onto those comments because Ryan Day doesn't say anything by accident. How did you respond to that in the moment? Like, if I bring it up now, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I appreciate his words. I try not to talk about myself very much. I try to just to be I like to joke, behind the scenes operator and put the guys in position to be successful, But anytime that your hard work gets, appreciated and to be able to put out there is awesome. And I appreciate Coach Day as a coach, but also as a man. This is a special guy that's running this operation.
Do you have a spot in your house where your national championship ring is going to go once you receive it? That because you're not going to wear it all the time, but recruiting trips and that. Is there already a place for it in your home?
No, you got to ask the boss of my house, my wife, wherever she wants to put that. So yeah, no, I don't have a special place out there. So
you haven't cleared off a mantle spot?
No.
This 3x3 square.
Not right as you walked about
2025. He's told us about
this 3x3 square.
You got to call the boss. I'll give you your number if you want to call the boss.
Do you know if you have a mantle in your living room?
Oh no, I don't even know. There's an open spot there.
I have a living room.
Yeah.
Yeah,
call the boss.
We're in his living room right now.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Getting ready for spring 2025. But it was great, Matt. Thanks for giving us the time to relive 2024 for the Ohio State safeties and Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom, Jordan Hancock, your whole group, and yourself. Congratulations on that accomplishment. I know that you're on to the next one. But thanks for squeezing in a little time for 24 hours.
Thanks a bunch. I appreciate you guys putting this together and taking the time to talk about the Buckeyes.
All right. For Jeremy Birmingham, I'm Austin Ward. That's Matt Guerrieri. We'll see you next.